It began in the brittle dusk of a forgotten October 1986, when the Utah wind carried more than dust through the canyons of Hollow Creek. The sky, heavy with rust-colored clouds, hung low over the desert scrub as if pressing down on the land itself. Out there, in the yawning silence where the road became gravel and the gravel became dirt, something ancient stirred, and 3 boys walked into its path. Their names were Caleb Yazzie, Darren Nez, and Milo Begay, Navajo teenagers raised in the quiet stretch between sandstone cliffs and rusting trailer parks. The trio was bound by bloodlines, school desks, and old stories passed down in whispers from grandfathers who never looked toward the hills after dark. They weren't bad kids, just curious. Their history teacher, Mr. Andrews, had assigned a folklore project. Most students picked ghost towns or mining tales. But Caleb, sharp-eyed, always sketching bones and stars in his notebook, had another idea. He wanted to document something that still breathed. The legend of the Yi Naldlushi, the Skinwalker. It wasn't just a story in their homes. It was a warning. Their elders never said the word aloud at night. Doors were locked. Ash was sprinkled. Dogs growled at things that didn't make sound. But the boys were 16, bold with borrowed confidence. Caleb's uncle had a VHS camcorder, big, boxy, and heavy. They loaded it with a fresh tape, filled a thermos with sweetened coffee, packed a half bag of Cheetos, and by 10 a.m., they were seen driving out past County Road 12 in Milo's dad's old Dodge Ram, its paint flaking like dried skin. The last person to see them was Caleb's 11-year-old sister, Jessa. She watched her brother buckle the camera bag into the passenger seat, give her a wink, and say, "If we find one, I'll bring back its tooth." She told her mother he smiled too wide when he said it. By sundown, they hadn't returned. By midnight, the parents were driving the back trails, headlights slicing through rabbit brush and dust. They found tire tracks near the creek bed, but no boys. Not a scrap of clothing, no campfire, no laughter echoing off the canyon walls. The search parties started the next morning. Volunteers, sheriff deputies, even an old tracking dog named Whiskey. They searched for 3 days. Then, something was found. A rancher named Bill Toller, checking his fence line at dawn, spotted something unusual in the gravel beside the dry Hollow Creek. 6 shoes, not scattered, not buried, lined up side by side, all turned upside down, and just beside them, half sunk in the silt, Caleb's camcorder. The lens cracked, the casing scraped, but the tape inside was still intact. That afternoon, the sun refused to come out from behind the clouds, and Hollow Creek was never quiet again. Sheriff Don Vickers wasn't the kind of man to scare easy. 32 years on the force, 2 divorces, and a reputation for shutting down local bar fights with a raised brow. But when Deputy Callahan handed him the camcorder in a brown evidence bag, he didn't touch it, just stared through the plastic at the cracked plastic shell and said, "Get Jody from the station. She's still got that old VHS deck." They played the footage in the back room of the sheriff's office, the one with the flickering ceiling light and the dusty corkboard full of faded missing posters. Just Don, Jody, and Callahan. The tape stuttered as it began, lines of static crawling up like spider legs. Then, motion. The lens jittered, pointed at the floor of the truck. Milo's voice off camera, laughing. "You didn't hit record yet, dumbass." A thumb covered the lens. Then it cleared. The image sharpened into a moving view of the Utah desert, the camera bouncing with each bump in the road. Darren was driving. Caleb rode shotgun. Milo held the camera. Their voices were light, teasing each other about ghosts, about girls, about the math test they'd skipped. It played like a home movie. For 23 minutes, nothing was wrong. They stopped the truck near the dried creek, got out, filmed bushes, trees, empty plains. Milo zoomed in on a lizard. Caleb interviewed Darren in mock seriousness. "Tell the camera what you saw, sir." More laughter. Then, just after the 27-minute mark, something changed. The wind picked up. You could hear it, like a soft howl pushing against the mic. Darren looked off camera. "Did you hear that?" he asked. Milo laughed, but quieter now. They moved toward the tree line, the lens tilted, shaking, following Caleb's finger. There, right there. Movement. Nothing on screen, just brush swaying. They began to whisper. Their joking stopped. The camera trembled slightly in Milo's hands. There was a sound, soft, far off. A voice, like someone calling help. Then silence. Then the voice again. Louder, closer, but it was Caleb's voice. Exactly his voice. Calling from deeper in the trees. Only Caleb was right there in frame. Frozen, mouth open, not speaking. "What the hell?" Darren whispered. The camera jerked sideways, static for a second. When the image returned, it was tilted on the ground. You saw boots moving, the boys running, Caleb yelling something. "It's not me, don't answer it." The last image was a single frame, one blurry figure far behind the boys, standing unnaturally still between the trees. No face, just a tall outline, watching. Then the screen went black. But the tape didn't end. For the final 2 minutes, there was no video, only audio, breathing, rustling, a faint, wet, scraping noise. And at the very end, that same voice, Caleb's voice, soft, slow, unnatural, whispering, "Come back, I'm still here." Sheriff Vickers stopped the tape, his finger hovering over the eject button for longer than necessary. Then he looked at Callahan. "Burn a copy and don't talk to no one about this." Outside, the sun finally broke through the clouds, but Hollow Creek stayed dark. The Jacobs farmhouse had been abandoned since 1971. Locals whispered about it, something about the father vanishing, the mother found half-mad, scratching at the walls with her bare hands, whispering about the little door beneath the house. Sheriff Vickers never paid the rumors much mind. Until now. Because on the second search of the area around Hollow Creek, 2 state troopers found Darren's cap tucked neatly on the porch rail of that very house, placed like a calling card, or a warning. They pried open the front door. Mold, dust, and decay clung to the air like wet skin. Wallpaper peeled down like shed flesh. Every step creaked like it resented being remembered. The ground floor was empty, except for small, strange things. A stack of children's teeth in a jam jar. A mirror cracked from the inside. A crucifix hung upside down, nailed to the wall backwards. But it was the basement door that mattered. It wasn't locked, just stuck, like it didn't want to be opened. Trooper Willis shoved it with his shoulder, flashlight trembling in his hand. The beam bounced down rotten stairs into a low concrete cellar filled with garbage, broken chairs, and something that smelled of rust and rot. And then they saw it. The crawl space. A rectangular hole in the far wall, too small for an adult, but dug with eerie precision. The concrete had been chiseled away to form a dark passage just big enough for a teenager to squeeze through. Sheriff Vickers arrived minutes later. He stood staring at it, lips pressed white, silent. Then he asked, "You check inside?" Willis shook his head. Jody, the dispatcher, braver than most, volunteered. They strapped a body cam to her jacket, clipped a mic to her collar. Vickers handed her his flashlight, heavy and old, etched with his initials. She got on her knees, crawled inside. The camera feed was grainy, black and white, jumping with every breath she took. Her voice trembled as she called out, "Darren? Milo? Caleb?" Silence. Then, scratches. From ahead, faint, rhythmic. She whispered, "Something's moving." She crawled farther. The tunnel bent to the left, then sharply down. The dirt grew wet, slick with a black ooze that clung to her gloves. There's something carved here," she muttered. "On the walls, symbols. They look burned into the rock." The scratches stopped, then breathing. Not hers. Right up against the mic, slow, gurgling, wet. Jody screamed. The camera spun. Darkness consumed the screen. They pulled her out by the ankles. She was shaking, her hands clutching something. Not her flashlight, not her mic. A tattered denim sleeve. Darren's jacket, still warm, still damp. But he wasn't with it. Jody never said what she saw in the tunnel, not fully, only that something was waiting at the bottom, smiling. And it had too many mouths. After that, Vickers sealed the Jacobs house, nailed the crawl space shut. But late that night, he stood outside in his cruiser, just staring. Because through the boarded windows, he swore he saw the faintest glow, like a television flickering, and someone crawling across the floor. After the incident at the Jacobs house, Hollow Creek changed. The sky hung lower. The wind came from the wrong direction. Animals, strays, birds, even deer, avoided the northern tree line like it breathed something sour. And Sheriff Vickers began walking with a limp. No one asked about it. He just started limping the day after Jody crawled out of that hole holding Darren's sleeve. Vickers moved quieter now. He drank heavier. And some nights, if you passed the station at 3:13 a.m., you'd see him standing barefoot on the pavement staring down at his feet, like he didn't trust them. The missing boys, Darren, Milo, Caleb, still hadn't been found, but new tracks kept showing up, in places they shouldn't be. One morning, Park Ranger Elias Monroe discovered barefoot prints circling the fire watch tower. Small, too small. Each toe perfectly outlined in soot, burned black into the frost. The tower was locked from the inside, and still, muddy prints climbed all the way to the top hatch. Inside, nothing was missing, except for the nails. Every single nail had been unscrewed from the wooden floorboards and stacked neatly in the center, arranged in a spiral, facing down. The next night, the Johnson family's dog vanished. Old Barney, gentle mutt, deaf and half-blind. They found his leash in the backyard, still clipped to the chain, still taut, as if something had pulled him straight through the dirt. Then came the knocking. First reported by Eleanor Sharp, a retired teacher. She lived alone near the quarry road, called the station in tears. They knocked like they knew me, she sobbed. 3 knocks, slow, heavy, and then they whispered. She trailed off. "What did they say, ma'am?" asked Deputy Roan. Eleanor's voice went flat. "They said, 'Why didn't you help us?'" When officers arrived, they found no footprints, no signs of a break-in, just Eleanor's front door, wide open, and on the welcome mat, a row of children's shoes, perfectly aligned, all pointing inward. The final blow came 2 days later. Sheriff Vickers' voicemail recorded a call at 2:44 a.m. The voice was a child's, crying. "Please. I came back, but my feet won't go the right way anymore. Please, Mom. I think they put new ones on me." Then static, then silence. The caller ID showed no number, but the dispatch logs confirmed it pinged from inside the station, from Vickers' own office. He burned the tape, but not before listening to it 57 times. Each time, the voice sounded a little less like a stranger, and a little more like Caleb. The tape was never meant to be heard again. Sheriff Vickers swore he'd destroyed it, poured lighter fluid over the cassette and lit it in the alley behind the station. Watched the plastic curl like black petals, watched the smoke rise. But days later, a copy showed up on his desk, unlabeled, no envelope, no return address, just a cassette in a Ziploc bag, wet inside, like it had been pulled from a pond. Vickers didn't touch it. He just stared. Deputy Roan, younger and less burdened by the ways of that land, played it without asking. He pressed play. Static. Then the sobs began again. Familiar now. The same boy's voice. But something was different this time. New background sounds, a low humming, almost musical, a distant mechanical clunk, and whispering, overlapping layers of it, like a dozen mouths too close to the mic. Then a word, clear. Closer. Roan yanked the tape out and threw up in the corner. Later, when he recovered, he told Vickers something he hadn't said before. There was a smell. What kind of smell? Like wet hair, but burned and sweet. Like meat left in a hot car. Vickers didn't respond. He just stood, knuckles white on the window frame, staring out at the dusk. The clouds above Hollow Creek no longer moved. They just hovered. That night, something set off the station's motion alarms. Footage showed nothing but empty rooms, desks, filing cabinets, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. But at exactly 3:17 a.m., the tape recorder turned on by itself. It began playing the same cassette Roan had destroyed. The same voice, the same plea. "Please, my feet don't work right. I came back. I'm still here." Only this time there was a second voice behind it. Deeper, older, almost playful. It whispered, "Not him." Then the lights exploded. Every bulb in the station shattered from the inside. Roan found Sheriff Vickers outside in the parking lot, barefoot again, sitting cross-legged in the frost, humming to himself. His shoes were 10 feet away, both of them upside down. Inside one shoe, a fingernail, painted red, too small to be his. The maintenance man quit 2 days after the light bulb incident, didn't leave a note. Just his tool belt left behind in the hallway. One screwdriver half melted, a patch of floor sticky beneath it, as if something had seeped up from below. When Roan pulled up the wooden panel where the sheriff had been sitting, he found something carved into the subfloor. A spiral. Deep. Etched in crude, repeating turns, as if someone had traced it with a blade over and over. But it didn't look recent. No fresh cuts, no sawdust. The wood was worn smooth as though many feet had followed the shape in ritual. He touched the center. Cold. Then he heard it. Not a voice, but a scraping. Slow, like nails dragging on the underside of the boards. He replaced the panel and never spoke of it again. But others noticed. Paperwork began going missing from the station archives, always related to Hollow Creek. Photos, statements, autopsy records. Entire case files disappeared only to reappear days later, placed back in reverse order. One morning, someone found the photo of the 3 Navajo boys, the one they'd used on the missing posters, taped to the water cooler. The eyes had been blacked out. Not with ink, with ash. Human ash. Roan finally broke into Sheriff Vickers' office after 3 days without seeing him. The blinds were closed and the room stank of mildew and old sweat. The spiral was there too. Drawn on the walls in marker, again and again, 100 times. Some were childlike, some were precise, architectural, almost mechanical. And one was drawn in blood. Roan backed out of the room slowly, but the door slammed shut behind him. Locked. From the inside. It stayed locked for 3 hours. When it opened, the room was empty. The spirals were gone. All but one, under the desk, traced in dried salt. The same spiral now appears in other places, in fogged mirrors, in frost on windshields, in the patterns birds make as they lift from wires. Roan started seeing it in his dreams too, drawn in the dirt, surrounded by bare footprints, facing the woods, always leading toward Hollow Creek. They said Hollow Creek had gone dry in the summer of 1982. No water flowed, not even during the rains. The riverbed cracked, curled like burned paper. Animals stopped crossing it. Insects gathered at its center, moving in strange spirals. But then, in October of 1986, the same month the boys vanished, the creek began to hum, only at night. A deep, droning vibration that rose just past hearing. People thought it was power lines at first, or maybe wind caught in the ravine. But there were no lines near the water, and the wind didn't blow like that. Roan first heard it while driving the back road near the creek. His headlights flickered as he passed. The radio cut out. Static surged, then cleared. But it hadn't returned to the station he was playing. It was playing back the boy's voice. Cody's, faint, staggered. "Help, help me, please." Then laughter, not Cody's. He stopped the car, rolled down the window. The hum came clearer now. Not just a sound, but a vibration through the soil, through the trees, through his teeth. A pattern. Low, low rise. Low, low rise. A rhythm, like a chant. The air smelled like wet stone and copper. Roan walked to the edge of the dried creek, looked down, no water, just dozens of dead birds, all perfectly aligned along the path of the river, every single one facing upstream. Their eyes open, beaks parted, wings stiff, and then the hum rose again, this time with voices folded into it, children laughing, something whispering behind it. A branch snapped behind Roan. He turned, but saw only woods. When he looked back at the birds, they were gone. All of them. Only their shadows remained, charred outlines baked into the dust. The creek has hummed ever since. Some say it stops if you stand in the riverbed long enough, but only because something else begins to hum from the trees. On November 3rd, 16 days after the boys vanished, Deputy Alma Ruiz received a brown padded envelope. No return address, no postage stamp, just her name, written in red ink, jagged handwriting, almost childlike. Inside was the missing camcorder tape. Not the camcorder, just the VHS-C cassette, wrapped in damp cloth. Ruiz stared at it for a long time before touching it. The cloth smelled like sulfur and rain. She brought it inside the station, placed it under the evidence lamp. Flies buzzed near it, though the room had no windows open. The other officers didn't want to be near it. The janitor quit the next day. Ruiz drove the tape to a private video repairman out in Cedar City, paid him in cash, told no one else. He called her 3 days later, said the tape was wrong. He'd repaired hundreds of damaged reels in his life, he said. But this one, it spooled backward. Naturally. No matter how he inserted it, the tape unspooled in reverse. The image played like memories being stolen. He warned her not to watch it. Ruiz did anyway. She locked her office door, turned the volume low, and hit play. Static, then trees, shaking. The camcorder's microphone picked up wind and a heartbeat. Cody's voice whispered, "Don't stop, just keep going." Then a flash of light, not natural, too sharp, like a camera flash from inside the woods. She saw the boys, faces pale, mouths moving, but no sound. And behind them, something moved. At first it looked like a deer, antlers, elongated limbs, slow gait, but the limbs bent backward, the eyes glowed, its skin shimmered like oil on water. It wasn't filmed directly, it was reflected. In water, in mirrors, in the camera lens itself, as if it existed only when watched. Then came the final frame, a close-up, too close, the screen filled with an eye, human, but not. It blinked once, slowly, and then the tape ejected itself. No power loss, no command, just spit out, like it didn't want to be watched anymore. Ruiz never spoke of it again. She burned the envelope, sealed the tape in a lead-lined box, but every few nights since, she hears the camcorder whirring in her closet, and the sound of someone breathing through the keyhole. 2 weeks after the tape reappeared, Micah's older sister, Ruth, decided to pack away his things. She had been avoiding his room, letting it sit untouched, frozen in time like the rest of the town. But the dreams wouldn't stop. Whispers through her bedroom wall, and the smell of ash creeping in under her door at night. So on a fogged Sunday morning, she entered Micah's room with a cardboard box in trembling hands. Everything was still there. The flannel shirt draped over his chair, his shoebox of comic books, a jar of marbles beside the bed cloudy with dust. She found his diary beneath the mattress, bound in black leather with a snapped buckle. It wasn't like Micah to keep a journal. He hated writing, but the pages were full, written in frantic loops, page after page, some words scratched so hard the pen nearly tore through. The first entries were simple, plans for the film project, sketches of scenes, notes about the trip to Hollow Creek, but by page 23, the tone changed. Something followed us. It mimics us. Cody heard his own voice call from the trees, but he didn't say anything. Then a drawing, charcoal pressed deep into the paper, a creature with deer antlers, long limbs, a mouth that opened sideways, eyes on its hands. Below it, Micah wrote in shaking lines, "It doesn't walk, it slides. It watches from reflections. Don't say its name." Then near the final pages, the writing began to repeat, over and over. "We shouldn't have filmed it. We shouldn't have filmed it. We shouldn't have filmed it." On the last page was only a smear, something black, sticky even after all these weeks. Ruth touched it with the tip of her finger and gasped. The closet light flickered, and in the reflection of the window behind her, she thought she saw a fourth silhouette, one that didn't belong to her. She left the diary on the floor and backed out of the room. That night, the jar of marbles shattered on its own. Every single marble rolled to the foot of her bed and stopped there, as if they had been placed. The next morning, the diary was gone. Deputy Alejo Ruiz had only been with the county sheriff's office for 6 months when he volunteered to revisit Hollow Creek alone. The others had stopped going after dark, even Sheriff Mathers. The place made radios go silent, compasses spin, and something about the air just didn't feel right. But Ruiz wasn't local. He didn't grow up with stories of skinwalkers or know about the missing hikers from '72. He just wanted to prove himself. On October 14th, Ruiz signed out a cruiser and drove up toward the creek, ignoring the cloudy dusk settling over the canyons. He brought with him only a flashlight, a holstered revolver, and a freshly printed map. The dashcam footage from his vehicle was recovered weeks later, buried in a locked drawer the sheriff never explained. It begins normally. Wind on the mic, pine trees blurring past. Then the engine sputters, the headlights flicker, and Ruiz mutters, "That's not right. I just filled the tank." He steps out. The flashlight beam dances ahead into a fog that wasn't there moments earlier. Ruiz walks off screen. The camera rolls. 5 minutes, 10, nothing. Then, a voice. Not his. Soft, barely audible. Female. "Alejo." It repeats. "Alejo." From behind the cruiser, but no one's there. Then, a loud bang. The camera jumps, and suddenly Ruiz sprints back into frame, blood down his temple, shirt torn. He screams something in Spanish, incoherent, panicked. He tries the cruiser door, but it won't open. He turns to run into the woods, then freezes, because standing just beyond the tree line is Ruiz, or something that looks like him. Same uniform, same flashlight, same bleeding cut. But the eyes are glowing, and the mouth never moves. Ruiz backs away, shaking, whispers, "Dios mío," and then the camera goes black. The cruiser was found abandoned, empty, lights still flashing. They never found Ruiz's body, only his badge, pinned to the trunk of a tree, with human teeth pressed into the metal like bite marks. 2 nights after Deputy Ruiz vanished, the sky above Hollow Creek turned a deep copper red. It wasn't just a lunar eclipse. The elders called it a blood veil, something older than calendars. A warning. Sarah Begay, an elder from the nearby Navajo community, showed up unannounced at the sheriff's station. She hadn't stepped foot in town in over a decade, not since her own nephew disappeared near that same creek. She carried with her a bundle of cedar branches and a tightly woven pouch of ash. "I need to speak to the sheriff," she said. "You have opened something." Sheriff Mathers tried to dismiss her, but Sarah laid the pouch on his desk and whispered a word in Diné Bizad. The air in the room turned cold, all radios gave static, and a photograph fell off the wall by itself. The sheriff sat down slowly. Sarah explained that a spirit had been unbound, not a ghost, not a man. Something that wears the skin of others, that mimics their voice, their pain, their final moments. The boys woke it up, she said. It was asleep, until they played that tape on sacred land. Sheriff Mathers asked what it wanted. Sarah looked toward the fogged-up window and answered simply, "Company." That night, the blood moon hung above the canyon like an open eye. Dogs in town wailed nonstop. The wind carried voices, overlapping, broken, familiar, like fragments of the boys' last words. Several townsfolk reported hearing footsteps outside their windows. One woman claimed her late brother knocked on her front door, begging to be let in. The next morning, cedar trees near the creek had been shredded, torn like paper. And in the center of the bridge where the boys filmed their last scene, someone, or something, had carved a single word into the wood with fingernails. Hello. But no prints. No blood. Just the sound of a low, crawling whisper in the trees repeating the same line over and over again. Come play. Come play. Come play. It arrived in a cardboard box. No return address. No postage. Just the word play written in thick black marker across the top. Deputy Lane found it sitting on the front steps of the sheriff's station just before dawn. The air was still, silent. Not even the birds were singing. Inside the box was the boy's missing camcorder, not a replacement. The exact same one. Its plastic casing was scratched, warped by moisture, but unmistakably theirs. Etched into the bottom, barely visible under dirt and dried creek sediment, were the initials, MJD, Marcus James Delgado. It hadn't been seen in weeks. They had combed the entire Hollow Creek area. Divers, search dogs, helicopters. The camcorder had vanished. Until now. Sheriff Mathers and Deputy Lane brought it into the evidence room and, against every warning from Sarah Begay, decided to watch the tape. The sheriff inserted the cassette into the old VHS player. What they saw made Deputy Lane throw up in the trash can beside him. It started innocently enough. The boys laughing, joking, setting up their project near the bridge. The trees swayed gently in the breeze. Sunlight shimmered on the creek's surface. Then, around the 17-minute mark, the camera jolted sharply. There was a strange sound. Not quite a scream, not quite a growl, just a low, wet exhale. The screen shook, the image distorted. Marcus's voice whispered something off-screen. You hear that? Then came a blur. The camera tumbled, hit the ground, and kept filming sideways. For the next 3 minutes, there were only shadows. Tall, twitching shapes. Faces that weren't faces. And one by one the boys' voices faded out. Until only static remained. But just before the tape ended, one final frame. The camcorder, lying in the creek, filmed something towering above it. Not a person, not an animal, just a shape. A hulking, bone-thin silhouette with eyes that didn't blink and a smile too wide. It bent toward the lens and spoke, in Marcus's voice. I'm cold. Let me in. Then the screen went black. The camcorder ejected the tape on its own. No one spoke. Outside, the wind howled against the station walls. The blood moon was gone. But Hollow Creek was not finished. Sheriff Mathers didn't sleep that night. Neither did Deputy Lane. The camcorder's return had shifted something, as if the case had woken up, stretching its limbs after weeks of silence. By morning, the sheriff's office looked like a war room. Red string crisscrossed the corkboard. Pins marked sightings, footprints where the boys had been last seen. There were photos of the creek, of the bridge, of the ripped open tents the search team never made public. And in the center of it all was a crude, hand-drawn map. Marcus's father had brought it in, clutching it like a lifeline. I found this in his school notebook, Mr. Delgado whispered. It wasn't there before. The map showed Hollow Creek, but it was wrong. The trees were twisted into spirals. The water ran in loops. There were markings, X's, circles, strange symbols that didn't belong to any known language. And in the lower corner, scrawled in jagged pencil, the path bends backward. Don't follow the crying. Sarah Begay arrived just after noon, clutching an old binder of tribal legends. When she saw the map, her face drained of color. These aren't X's, she whispered. They're markers, burial signs. This land, this spot here, used to be a crossing, a place where skinwalkers were banished beyond the veil. She pointed to one symbol on the map, a crooked triangle with a dot inside. I've only seen this once. It means the hollow place. A a gap between our world and something else. Deputy Lane backed away from the board. "That's where we found the shoes," he muttered. "Upside down. All 3 pairs." Silence fell again. The sheriff stared at the map, rubbing his temple. "Then what the hell are we dealing with?" Sarah didn't answer. Instead, she unfolded an old newspaper clipping from 1947. It showed a headline in faded ink. "3 local boys vanish near Hollow Creek. No trace found." The photos were grainy but unmistakable. 3 teenagers, smiling. One of them looked just like Marcus. The map fluttered slightly on the wall, though no wind had touched it. And outside the sheriff's station, a crow let out a sound that wasn't a caw, but a laugh. The entrance wasn't marked on any real map. Not even the old forest trails, not the Ute charts, not the ranger logs. But the hand-drawn page from Marcus's notebook pointed straight to it, just past the creek's bend, where 3 black pines grew impossibly close, their trunks braided by some natural or unnatural force. Sheriff Mathers, Deputy Lane, and Sarah Begay hiked there just before dusk. The woods were deathly quiet. No birds, no bugs, not even the breeze. It felt like the trees themselves were watching. They stopped at the braided pines. The ground beneath was oddly soft, like it had been dug and filled again, centuries ago. Sarah knelt, brushing away leaves until she found it. A stone, flat and smooth, with carvings long faded. She whispered a protection chant under her breath. Lane's hand hovered over his holster. Then the stone moved, not by her hand, by itself. It shifted, scraping in the dirt as if reacting to their presence. Beneath it was a hole, small, but deep, and dark. Not just shadow dark. A darkness that pulled the eye inward like a whirlpool. Sarah dropped a match inside. It never hit bottom. Instead, they heard something inhale, long and wet and slow. A breath coming up from the hollow. Lane stumbled back. "That's not wind," he whispered. Sarah nodded, trembling. "It's awake." Sheriff Mathers pulled out Marcus's camcorder. It had begun recording by itself, flickering, zooming in on the hole. And from inside it a sound emerged, faint, trembling, echoing through the forest like a memory. A boy's voice. "Help me." It was Marcus, but it wasn't. The cadence was off, too perfect. Like someone pretending to be Marcus, from behind a mouth that had never been human. The sheriff dropped the camera. Sarah stood frozen, staring at the hollow. "I think this is what they stepped into," she whispered. "Not a place, but a door." And as night fell across the trees, something beneath that stone began to knock, softly, steadily, like it knew someone was listening. It took weeks before they sealed the hollow. Sarah performed the last ritual with red ochre, cedar smoke, and a circle of cornmeal. Sheriff Mathers stayed until the final chant was spoken, his boots rooted in fear, though he never said it aloud. The camcorder was locked away in evidence, its battery still impossibly full. Footage now showed frames that hadn't existed before, of things that had no names, no shapes, just impressions burned into light. Crooked limbs, too many joints, mouths behind eyes. The boys were never found. Not their bodies, not their backpacks. Only their shoes, upside down on the dry bed of Hollow Creek, lined in perfect rows like someone had placed them there deliberately. And then, the calls began. A week after the hollow was sealed, Mrs. Yazzie, the elderly woman from the edge of town, reported hearing laughter outside her window. Teenaged boys, familiar tones. But when she looked, there were only 3 coyotes watching her house, standing on 2 legs. Others said they saw Marcus walking down Route 11 at night, shirtless, barefoot, staring straight ahead with eyes like glass. But when they stopped their cars, he was gone. No prints, no trace. Deputy Lane quit the force. Said something followed him home. Said it wore his brother's face. Sheriff Mathers never spoke publicly again. He retired early, left town, and was found a year later in Arizona, dead in a motel room, mouth full of soil. And Sarah? She kept the drawings, all of them. She said the boys were never really gone, not completely, that some echoes stay behind when doors open in the wrong place, that the land remembers, especially when blood touches it. In 1991, 5 years after the incident, a new family built a cabin near Hollow Creek. They had a son named Julian. One morning, Julian disappeared while playing in the woods. The only thing left behind was his camcorder, still recording. The tape ended with the same whisper heard in Marcus's last footage. Only this time, it said Sarah's name, close up on the dried creek bed, empty now. The camera lingers on the 3 upside-down shoes half sunk in dust. Wind howls softly through dead reeds. A faint whisper rises beneath it, calling a name long forgotten. Static fades in, and a new tape begins to play. You've just watched The Hollow Creek Incident, 1986, based on true reports, eyewitness accounts, and the last surviving footage. Some tapes should stay buried, some voices should never be answered, and some names were never meant to be spoken aloud. This was another case from Sanctified Secrets. Subscribe if you're not afraid of what's still out there, because we're only just getting started.